The biggest obstacle to the worker being successful, to the worker, the average worker being able to build themselves up, is capitalism. And you are going to hear a capitalist economist who cares about the worker and believe the worker deserves what they're asking for, points out. I want you guys to listen to this guy in detail. This capitalist economist points out that the reason we cannot be humane with these reporters is because this capitalist system doesn't work that way. I mean, what gets me is that he's not ashamed to just matter of fact tell you that capitalism stops the worker from being able to maximize his income for what he's worth. Check it out, and then we'll take it on the other side. Because when I heard him say this, it was just before the show. And I came home after bringing back Ashley, and I saw that, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to show this to the PDR posse. The PDR posse must see this. Check this out, people. It comes at the end of this 4-minute or so piece. Listen to what the economist says. It's going to, if you're listening correctly, it will blow your mind.
Steve, you've been in the negotiating room before at what was a key moment in the survival of the big three automakers. They were not doing well. As I understand it, you tell me because you were in there and I was not, the union made a lot of concessions. They gave up a lot of their benefits package. The amount of money that new workers were making was far less than the older veteran workers. I think it was about half. Now that these companies are making record profits, now that you've seen CEO pay go up as much as it has, is it fair for them to ask for some of that back?
Sure, it's entirely fair for them to ask some of that back. I would say they have gotten some of that back in the 15 years or so since we rescued the auto companies. But I am very sympathetic to their needs and their desires. The fact is that if you look at auto worker wages in this country over the last 10 or 12 years, they've essentially flatlined after you adjust for inflation, whereas most other workers have gotten something of an increase over that period of time in other industries. The key problem here that you have to recognize is that unlike, say, a UPS driver or an American Airlines pilot, where those jobs aren't going anywhere, in manufacturing and auto specifically we're talking about here, those jobs are mobile in a sense. They can go to the South, where there are many, many factories now operating with non-union workers paid much, much less than the union workers, and then go to Mexico, where recently the number of auto workers in Mexico is higher now than the number of auto workers in the U.S., and where the Detroit 3 companies have 20 facilities among them down there making cars with people who are paid literally as little as $8 or $9 a day. And so the yin and the yang of this, so to speak, is that the more the workers make, the possibility is that there'll be fewer jobs, and there needs to be a balance on behalf of both sides for this to work.
I don't want to be Pollyanna here, but the companies have a choice on whether to keep the plants here or to move them to the South or to Mexico, where they make less dollars. I just am stuck on what the union conceded to help keep these companies afloat, and this idea that we helped you in your time of need. We feel like now that everything is going so well, and it's clearly going quite well, that we should share in that profitability. We should share in that hard work done over the past 15 years. Goldman Sachs researchers modeled what a 40% raise would cost. I'll put the numbers up on the screen. They project a 40% raise for workers would cost between $4 billion to $6 billion over 4 years for GM and Ford. They didn't model Stellantis. General Motors gross profit last year was $22.344 billion. That's a 32% increase. Brian said that a moment ago. Ford, their profit, $25.5 billion, a 9%, give or take, increase over 12 months. With numbers like that, what can the companies reasonably afford to give the workers while still maintaining the money that they need, and this is key, to develop and to innovate on electric vehicles where they have a whole lot of competition?
Well, as your figures implied, and I wouldn't argue with them, the amount that the unions are asking for relative to the profits is not life-threatening by any stretch of the imagination. I certainly get that. Labor is only one relatively small part of the cost of making a car. So yes, you can pay labor more and still make a car. Nonetheless, in our capitalistic society, for better or worse, companies are tasked with essentially keeping costs as low as possible. And if costs in the Midwest to make cars goes up too much, those jobs will move, whether they can afford to keep them in the Midwest or not. Unless you somehow legislate it, they will move. And then again, I don't want to sound like I'm here as a spokesman for the companies. I'm certainly not. I'm sympathetic to both sides. But I would also point out that General Motors stock hasn't moved at all, really, since it went public more than a decade ago. So the shareholders of General Motors have not lost money, but they haven't made any money in the last 10 years either, which is because this is a tough business, as we have all learned over the years.
So I hope you heard the end. Capitalism, for better or for worse, seem to simply reduce costs. That's all it does. That's all it wants to do, so that the profits can go to the few. So I am going to squeeze as much as I can get out of the worker. I'm going to squeeze as much as I can get out of the supplier. I'm going to squeeze as much as I can get out of everybody, so that that person, the parasites, and notice what I call the shareholders, so that the parasites, the executives, the parasites, so that they can make more. You know what is so funny? I have a friend in the oil business, right? Does the money stuff for the retail portion of the business, right? And here is how their profits get, their bonuses get exploded, right? Several tens of thousands of dollars in bonuses. Here's how it makes. If I can get those workers in that store to be more efficient, and what does getting those workers in the store more efficient means? It means they work less people, do more work for the same amount, right? And what that does is it reduces the overall cost of that retail entry point. So you have less people working, and for having those people work harder, to her boss, the vice president sees, oh, you have increased your efficiency at these stores. No, she did not increase the efficiency of the store. She worked the hell out of those people who earned the same amount, worked harder with less people, and the executives just see the numbers and say, oh, the store is more efficient. I get a big bonus because I replicate that store after store after store after store after store, and I get a piece of the action, and the worker gets niet, nada. Executives get, shareholders get, but the people who actually do the work don't. So my brothers and my sister, when I say what you see our sister Alistair Waters put there when she says, yes, I believe in asserting your worth. We have got to assert our worth.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.